CDC heading into a critical meeting this week. A vaccine advisory committee is scheduled to meet over 2 days, expected to discuss vaccine mandates for COVID, Hep B, MMRV, and more. This comes after a report Friday said the Trump administration was preparing to link COVID shots to some pediatric deaths. Joining us now is former FDA Commissioner, CNBC contributor, Dr. Scott Gottlieb, also board member of Pfizer and Illumina. It's great to have you back, Dr. Gottlieb, and good to see you. What do you think is most at stake from this CDC meeting this week?
Probably the activity with respect to the MMRV vaccine and the hepatitis B vaccine. So MMRV is measles, mumps, rubella, and varicella. So it's a combination vaccine. About 10% of kids in the United States get it. There's long been an effort on the anti-vax side of the ledger to try to get this vaccine withdrawn from the market on concerns that there's a small seizure risk associated with the vaccine. That seizure risk can be fully mitigated if you check the child's temperature about 5 to 10 days out from vaccination and treat any fever over 100.5 degrees. So there's a delayed febrile reaction associated with this vaccine. The seizure risk is about 0.04%, so 1 in about 2,500 kids are at risk for that. But there has long been an effort to try to get this vaccine withdrawn from the market. It's on the agenda, and I would expect them to try to move on that. With hepatitis B, this has been in the news quite a bit, and there's been a lot of debate over this. This has been another longstanding issue with the anti-vax movement, where they don't believe that neonates should be getting this vaccine. And so this is on the agenda as well. I would expect to see CDC at least take a vote on whether it should be withdrawn from the schedule, so it's no longer given at birth. There's good reason why we give this vaccine at birth. If a neonate is infected with hepatitis B, they have about 90% chance of developing chronic hepatitis B infection. They can't clear the infection. But if they're vaccinated within the first 24 hours, you almost fully mitigate that risk. So we've done a good job of virtually eliminating hepatitis B from neonates, but this will set that back.
So it sounds like you don't agree if they do make any changes to both of these vaccines.
Well, look, the MMR vaccine is a separate issue. You have alternatives with respect to getting MMR and varicella separately. This is a vaccine developed by Merck. It's more convenient administration. I think with respect to hepatitis B, there is a risk that if we don't deliver this at birth, then you're going to see more children go on to develop chronic infection. With respect to hepatitis B, if someone gets infected after the age of, say, 5, they have a high chance of clearing the infection. But neonates are uniquely vulnerable. They're unable to clear the infection. And so a lot of the infections that we see in society are people who are infected at birth. There's about 25,000 women a year who are infected with hepatitis B who go on to deliver babies, and those babies are at risk. But if you could deliver that vaccine within the first 24 hours, you almost fully mitigate the risk that the baby is going to go on to develop chronic hepatitis B infection. And once you develop chronic hepatitis B infection, you stand a lifelong risk of cancer, of cirrhosis. About 25% of children who are infected while they're young will go on to die from the infection. And so this has been a multi-decade effort to try to virtually eliminate this infection from society. I think this would set us back. I think a lot of people don't dig down into why we vaccinate kids at birth. It sounds odd to vaccinate a child within the first 24 hours, but that's because the neonates are particularly vulnerable. They're unable to clear the infection. So if they do get infected at delivery, they're going to go on, in most cases, about 90% of cases, to develop chronic hepatitis B infection.
Scott, we've been taking note of some of this increasing diffusion of state recommendations above and beyond what HHS is recommending. And I wondered, do you think that is going to continue, and is it going to play out over sort of state party lines?
It is so far dividing along red and blue states. If you look at the states, there's about 20 states in all that have put in place standing orders to allow administration, particularly the COVID vaccine, at the point of pharmacy, which is going to conflict with the ACIP recommendations. I suspect that this is going to start to broaden out beyond just COVID. There are some red states in there. Virginia did it and Kentucky did it. But I think this is going to play out, unfortunately, along some partisan lines among states. And I think we're going to see more action like this. California just introduced a bill that would delink their recommendations from ACIP to medical professional societies. So I think what you're going to end up seeing is a patchwork of policies across all 50 states. It's going to be confusing to consumers. It's going to create friction in the marketplace. And it's probably going to, over time, subordinate the role of the federal agencies. And so I think the guidance coming out of ACIP will become marginalized, and a lot of these decisions are going to be made at state level. Now, that said, there will be some states, so long as they like the ACIP recommendations, they'll continue to tie their recommendations to that body. But a lot of states are going to go their own way now.
Scott, when I speak to healthcare investors, their frustration is not just limited to the FDA's posture on vaccines, but on overall drug approvals. A couple of them citing the work in particular of Vinay Prasad at the FDA, and what they feel is unwarranted blocking of drugs that conceivably have and show through their phase 2 and phase 3 trials effectiveness. One for example, melanoma on patients who are not getting the first-line therapy or not being treated effectively by the first-line therapy. This from Replimune. A number of other rare disease focus of other companies that also they seem to think had sufficient evidence to lead to an approval. Do you share that frustration with Vinay Prasad, with the leadership of Vinay Prasad?
Yeah, look, I think there's no question that Dr. Prasad has leaned in on particular reviews and injected his own judgment and guided the outcome of those reviews. And as a political appointee, that's highly unusual. I can't remember any point in time when that has occurred. But I think the number of cases where he's actually leaned in is a small subset. Now, it doesn't take many to create uncertainty across the entire marketplace because you never know which one he's going to take an active interest in. I think the broader story of FDA right now, though, is the loss of probably about a third of the review staff and the slowdown in state, phase 1, phase 2 reviews. FDA is trying to marshal resources to get adequate teams around the late-stage products. So they're clearing. But it's the earlier stage products, the ones still in development, that are hitting significant delays within the agency. And that is starting to be felt by venture capital firms and others who invest in early stage biotech. I do that as well. And we're starting to see that.
Finally, what do you ultimately think is going to be the upshot on COVID vaccines and recommendations? I know you're a board member of Pfizer. They're expect the reports that they're going to show the evidence of linked to child deaths. What ultimately do you think are going to be the guidelines of where COVID shots settle?
Yeah, so with respect to what you said, you referenced, they're doing a reanalysis of existing cases, both in children and pregnancy. These are cases that have already been reported, but two of the political appointees from Secretary Kennedy are doing their own analysis. And the question is, are they going to use that analysis to try to contraindicate use among children and in pregnancy? I think the bigger story, though, is going to be that there's a lot of discussion that they may restrict access to the COVID vaccine to only 75 and above, so people age 75 and above. If you're 65 to 74, you can only get it if you have a pre-existing condition. And they may limit use for anyone under the age of 65 to people who have a narrow set of pre-existing conditions like cancer or organ transplantation. So they may substantially narrow the vaccine beyond what the FDA did in the existing label, which was already substantially narrowed from where it was. Now, like we said at the outset, many states won't adhere to that. They'll put in place standing medical orders to overturn what ACIP has recommended, but some states won't. I think a lot of people in certain states are going to have difficulty getting access to the vaccine.
It's all confusing. Dr. Gottlieb, thank you very much for joining us with some of your expectations around what we're going to see this week.